Hey, good morning, everyone, and thank you guys for joining us. This is Tim and Rach with the Bush Group at Next Home Experience, and we are bringing you our weekly podcast. And today we are really excited to talk to you guys about short-term rentals, everyone's favorite topic. So everyone loves short-term rentals. So before we get into that, Rach, everything good down in Portland? I know up here we got a lot of snow with this storm. How are you guys doing? Is Dan dug you guys out yet? Are the cars ready to roll?
Cars are ready to roll. You can probably hear the plow outside right now, but it's a warm day out there today. It's really, really warm. We maybe only got a couple inches of snow and then just rain after that. So it's feeling like spring.
That's awesome. No, we got a good amount of snow and sleet last night through yesterday, and then overnight it turned into more snow. So woke up with driveways packed today. So I hope everyone's got dug out. Hope you guys are all safe, and hope you guys are back to work today after the holiday weekend. So thanks for joining us. We're going to get right into it. We were going to talk about lenders this week. We're going to bring a lender on. We're going to bring a lender on next week. We kind of jumped ahead, and we wanted to go back to talk about short-term rentals because that is just such a huge topic of conversation for clients and buyers and friends out there right now that everyone wants to know what's going on with short-term rentals. So the answer is it depends on the area. So short-term rentals are a great thing right now. They have absolutely taken real estate by storm, I feel like, especially through the COVID times. Hey, is that Zero back there? We had a special guest Zero on there today. We love Zero. Hey, that's what happens during a live podcast sometimes. You just never know what you're going to get, and Zero just wanted to be on camera today. So, but short-term rentals have definitely been an interesting topic of real estate, I think, over the last few years. There's been a lot of changes to them, a lot of pros, a lot of cons, a lot of triumphs, a lot of heartache. And I think that we've got some great experience throughout the state specifically. One of the things I want to do is I want to make this like a multiple part series, and I want to bring on some of our next home agents throughout the country because we have so many offices throughout the nation right now and some really great areas. I have a friend that sells Lauren Geldes down in Myrtle Beach. I'd love to bring Lauren on and talk to her about what's going on in Myrtle Beach. I think that she would do amazing with that. That's an area I'm kind of passionate in. Cool area. So that's one of the things we want to bring you guys with this, short-term rental talk. But specifically, we're going to kind of jump in and just, what piques everyone's interest. So, Rach, you have sold a few short-term rentals down in your area. Old Orchard Beach specifically has been kind of the hot spot. Why don't you walk us through the process of that? What were your clients looking for when purchasing those properties? What was some of the most important things to them, and what were some of their triumphs, their failures? Like what happened with that property to make it such a great sale and a successful Airbnb?
Exactly, yeah. So both of the clients that we're referring to, they were actually first-time investors here in the Old Orchard Beach area. So with it being very new to them and both of them actually being out of state, one of them being from Massachusetts and then another one from New Hampshire, both of them just had a really great love for the Maine coast. They loved the Old Orchard Beach area and they love bringing their families there. So they thought, why not buy a place that we can come and visit and then also capitalize on when we're not here? So
Absolutely.
with those people, one of them in particular, we got onto a for sale by owner, and we were able to work with him in order to buy the property. It was maybe less than zero point 0.2 miles from the beach, so still a great walking distance, but it needed a lot of updates. So we really walked through that, and they really had this huge vision of what they wanted to do with it, and that one actually turned out really, really well. And that first summer that they had made the listing live, they were actually booked out almost every single week, I think minus 2 weeks. So they had a ton of income generating on that property. And then on the second one there, I had a client who bought a 4 unit that's just kind of steps from the beach too. And they've done a really, really great job these past couple of years. They've also picked up a condo that's near the beach as well. And it's not only a great place to bring their family into vacation here in Maine, but a great spot to also make some extra money. So
Absolutely.
both of them do have the lifestyles in order to manage them themselves. One client in particular had brought on a management company and did like the services from it, but granted, they figured that they could just run it themselves too with the help of cleaners and all of that. So There was definitely some bumps in the road for them, of course, being first-time short-term rental
Yeah.
buyers. But of course, when looking for these properties, it incorporated a more in-depth look on my end, and then also on their end as well, as to if we buy this property at this price, what kind of price point are we looking at for a per week basis? How many
Mhm.
days are you going to be renting it out? You know, just to make sure that they are making money on that property. So both of them did a great job with renovations if needed, and then both had really really great summers.
No, I think that's the big thing, and you just touched on that, and a couple of things that So I've got some experience, obviously, with some short-term rentals that we've done. I've been involved with three different short-term rentals myself, with my family as well, and we've had some really fun times, some really nervous times, and at the end of the day, I think you said it perfectly. If you're buying a destination that you also like to go to, it makes it a win-win for that. um, One of the things that there's a lot of different pros and cons with the short-term rental is, are you going to have the professional management company do it, or are you going to do it yourself? There is a lot of stress when you're doing it yourself. I will say one of the things that I have learned probably the fastest, and big shout out to my management company that handles Charlotte Chalet, is they've taught me so much. They're phenomenal. But good check-in instructions, solid check-in instructions for your guests when they're coming to stay is probably the most important thing. That will alleviate most issues right off the bat. And I think just having that presence for that is absolutely one of the most important things. I am a big proponent, actually, of a property management company. I know it's a lot of people kind of think that maybe doing it yourself is the best solution. I don't think it's a bad solution. I have just had, I think, more success with the property management company route. I got kind of, I would get tired with, you know, doing my normal work and running all that stuff on the side. And I think a lot of people look at it as that it's an easy side job. It's not. It is a very difficult job to run a short-term rental. So hats off to the property management companies that handle that stuff, because it is absolutely incredible what they do, and the stuff the cleaning turnarounds and how they run so many properties. It's awesome. Rach, you touched on one thing that I want to go to. So the one of the clients you had that bought, what was the name of that place down there? They gave it like a name. What was it?
Yeah, the Salty
I
Flamingo.
love that. I couldn't remember what it
So
was. I knew it was something with flamingo.
yeah. So they bought that property, and I'm pretty sure that I shared the before and after pictures actually on my real
Those were
estate page.
unreal photos.
Crazy. So they had taken some before and after photos, and of course, this property was simply just like a 3-season property. It didn't have any insulation, just right down to the floorboards. It was a very basic, outdated property, and they went through there with sheetrock and paint and new
Mhm.
appliances and a brand new bathroom, and they have it all this pink flamingo theme,
Right.
which actually their daughters chose.
That's so cool.
And I think that
We got to bring
what
Charlotte down there this summer for a week down there.
exactly. Yeah. So that property in itself, I honestly think that one of the best grabs on that property is just the aesthetic.
Yeah.
So when people do go on Airbnb or VRBO to look for their short-term rentals, a lot of times they're looking for something that's A, convenient, but B, updated and fun too. That's also how we're starting to see those trends move into places like Nashville or Orlando and all of these places with these really fun, bright, different Airbnb experiences. So I think on top of great check-in instructions and great management, I think also aesthetics and photos and videos of the property to really show people what they're going to be getting into once they get there is super important.
Yeah, no, I think so 100%. Location is obviously a big deal when it comes to a short-term rental, and we'll kind of touch on some different things geographically with that as we get into this podcast and as we get, deeper into the series that we're going to do, because we'll break all these things down. One of the things we're really passionate with our team this year is we're actually creating a beta course over the next year to help people who want to be short-term investors go through a year-long process of, hopefully at the end, purchasing their first short-term rental, but helping them do that throughout a lengthy process that it's a successful track for them. I think you hit it right on the head, though. You got to have a theme. When you're going to separate, there's so many Airbnb locations out there right now, and a lot of people are doing it with these properties that you got to have good photos. You've got to have something that draws the attention in. But having a theme, I think, is absolutely going to make people want to, go stay. One of my friends, I remember Mark. I'll give him a shout out on this. Mark Lloyd, great local lender. We love working with Mark. He's an awesome guy. Him and his family went down to Orlando, and I believe he rented an Airbnb that was like a Mickey Mouse themed Airbnb. It was really cool, and he was showing me the pictures, and he was talking to me about what they were going to do, and like just that experience that they were going to have when they were going. Um, that's what drew them into that. So I think that is one of the most important things when looking at a short-term rental is, can you make it like a theme? If you're not going to have the nicest beach house on the water, what can you do with that beach house to make people want to stay and have a great time there? And there's a lot of things you can do without breaking the wallet that make it a really effective short-term rental, I think. One of the things that we've got feedback with one of our rentals was just having games there. And I'm not talking about, cornhole is obviously fun, like playing those games and stuff like that, but just having like the Monopoly, the Jenga, all those games, people just absolutely love playing, different board games when they're up, staying there. Rach, what was one of the things that when your people were looking at these properties, for like vacancy rates and everything like that, what were they really shopping for as far as like destination to try and get this rented for um, maximum usage? Was there any type of formula you can share with us that they were really interested in?
Yeah. So with that, I honestly think that their numbers on their end for what they wanted to make on these properties. Of course, if you're going into it and you're not going to be making it like your summer getaway as well, and you strictly just want to make money on this property, I think that that's a completely different mindset and also a bunch of different numbers as well to run there. But I think that being a real estate agent, and then on top of it, helping your clients buy these short-term rentals and even long-term rentals as well. But with the short-term rentals, we really went through a process of combing the internet. What sells best? What's booked the most throughout the summers? What do they look like? How close are they to the beach? What is the draw to these properties? So when we would go ahead and look at these properties, we would also take into account the other properties that we were looking at with what they were going for a weekly or a nightly rate, and then kind of applying that to or doing like an apples to apples with the property that they were looking at. Super important to also take note that a lot of these properties too, the condo that one of my clients had purchased, their HOA did allow short-term rentals, but
Very
they only
important.
allowed short-term rentals for a week minimum. So a lot of people and a lot of sometimes some inexperienced agents won't necessarily know that you really have to read into these HOA docs to see
Right.
what's allowed and what's not allowed. And we've obviously heard these horror stories sometimes of people buying properties and wanting to make it a short-term rental. But of course, with these smaller knit communities and in some of these destination areas, sometimes you do have HOAs and fees associated with that. So we did look into that, and it is possible for him to go ahead and do a week minimum. But of course,
Mhm.
that also kind of um, make sure not buyer pool,
Right.
but your clientele pool kind of smaller there.
Yeah.
So that's also something to take into account. And of course, if there's no restrictions, that's great because some people do just like to come for a weekend. They can't
Mhm.
necessarily take the week off. But of course, with places like Old Orchard Beach in Maine and even the coast of Maine, we often do see a lot of people come for a week to 2 weeks at a
Right.
time to spend like a summer vacation there. So it makes sense.
And I think
But
that's the interesting part to account for. And I'm curious how you guys did, and what they took into consideration for like off season, because I do think you're right. In the summertime in Maine, I do find it's easier to rent for a full week, and everything during those time frames. I think people are more apt to do that. During the winter, you definitely see more of the weekends, and then obviously, the vacation weeks and the holiday weekends, everything like that. What did they do anything differently during those off season times to kind of make it a little bit more marketable? I know one thing,
yeah,
and kind of, throw this out there. I don't know if they have or not, but we actually look for our clients in some of these areas to say, hey, during the off season, could this actually be a long-term rental for maybe like September to March or September to May, in between that Labor Day to Memorial Day time frame? That's kind of one of the things. Are they doing similar things down there, or are they still trying to do short-term during that
They
off season.
They are, which is great. And that's also something that I didn't necessarily think about for this podcast, but it was also something that we had to kind of run into in order to be able to find these perfect properties for them was figuring out what they wanted to do for our off-season months. Because, of
Mm-hmm.
course, Old Orchard Beach and our coastal towns here are very snoozy in the winter time. So I actually reached out to a couple local real estate agents down here. I also talked to some locals that were down there to try to figure out what they were doing with their off season. And from what we found, a lot of these websites like Furnish Finder, a bunch of those that kind of cater to people like traveling nurses
Mm-hmm.
or people who need these longer, not year long rentals, but anywhere from like 4 to 6 months.
Right.
They were perfect for these properties.
Yeah.
So they're actually able to make more money on that property than they would if they were to just rent it out for like just like a typical 6 month term
Absolutely.
with just anybody. But then catering to nurses and traveling doctors and all of that, they love to be near the coast or near some of those areas, even though it is our quiet season. And it works out well because it's great for their terms that they are here.
No, absolutely. I think that's amazing right there. I think when we look at buying the short-term rental specifically, I always look at it in a couple different lights. Is it a great short-term rental? What's the potential resale of it? The cash flow's definitely an important thing, but I'm more longevity when I'm looking at these. It's not I don't really look at a short-term rental as an instant, cash flow option. I think there's a lot of people that try to get that, and it's possible to do it, but there are a lot of upfront costs with a short-term rental that make it tough the first few years to see any significant cash flow, unless you're just getting a place that actually does, rent just nonstop, and then you can see it right from the beginning. It's kind of funny. So my family and I have, obviously wanted to do another property, and one of the things we were always looking for, because you've got Southern Maine, we've got kind of Central Maine. I never actually know what Bangor's really in. I actually think we're Central Maine because we're not Northern Maine, but everyone in the state will disagree. We're down east. Basically, wherever we are, we go up north, right? One of the things we look for is how close is it to an ITS trail, and I think that's one of the biggest things when looking. Obviously, in the summertime, you can rent a lake house like that. Everyone's looking to rent, go to, if the price is right and it's a good deal, you can always rent a lake house. I feel like that's an easy thing to do, but how can you cater to that winter recreation activities? And I think the ITS trails are the perfect one. If you're on a direct ITS trail track, that's an incredible business opportunity for a potential short-term rental, because of the fact that you're going to cater to a clientele that wants to have access to go maybe on the lake and then hit that ITS trail to do their snowmobiling or any of their other snowshoeing activities and things like that. One of the things I was actually talking to Olivia about today, we had a closing, then we were going to go get some coffee, and I was kind of giving her one of my stories about a short-term rental, and it was kind of in real estate for me so far. It has been the one that I regret the most. And so I was selling two of my friends' properties, great friends, grew up with them. They were awesome people. And they basically bought this property on a lake, and they got a great deal when they bought it. They did. They absolutely got a great deal on it. It was below market rate when they purchased it. And obviously the market had adjusted very much over the time that they had it in a short period. And so they had hired me to then sell it. Well, I it's my favorite lake. It's the lake I wanted to be on, and they wanted to sell it to me, and I would not buy it. And the reason I wouldn't buy it had nothing to do with vacancy rates, had nothing to do with not being able to rent it. I said to myself that I was not going to justifiably give my friends that I was like best friends with that much profit. And so I was telling Olivia, I said early on, I said I made such an emotional, like bad decision that I was looking at it in a rate. And I tell the story because I think a lot of people look at real estate in this light. They go, what did someone pay for it and what are they making off it? To me, that's irrelevant. It's absolutely irrelevant. At the end of the day, it just depends on what's that property going to do for income. Does it make sense financially, and does it actually cash flow properly? And if it actually the cap rates work and everything's there, and you're going to have your vacancy rates done, it doesn't matter what they paid for it and what they're selling it for. The market's always going to continue to adjust, and I'd say that's my biggest don't do. Don't follow my advice. Don't follow my example on that one, because I made a really poor financial decision by not buying that property. I did sell it to, another friend of ours bought it, and they're running a great short-term rental property on it now. So they've done a great job to it. I'm really happy for them. So, but just kind of a different way to look at things, and don't look at it so much about what that person paid for it, when they paid for it, or how they paid for it. That's irrelevant. What's only thing that matters is what's it worth today. And I think that's one thing for our clients going forward, looking at different, short-term rentals and things like that, is don't get caught up in, everything going around in the nation. Real estate is extremely hyper local, and everything is very cyclical on how it happens. And so I'm not going to buy an Airbnb property or a short-term rental or a VRBO property based off of what's going on in Miami or Phoenix or California. I'm going to buy it on what's going on in Maine right now. So Rach, with that being said, I know I have a lot of people reaching out to me every single day about short-term properties. Are you still getting a huge influx on people wanting to do these properties, or have the interest rates in the market slowed them down a little bit, or is there still a big demand for that?
The interest rates in the market has kind of slowed them down a bit. I always do, at the start of the new year, I'll reach out to my previous clients from the year, even the year previous to that, just to see maybe what their goals are for this year, or even how I can help. There's been plenty of times that I've reached out and they're like, well, I'm looking for a new property manager, or I need somebody who can be a great asset for cleaning. So I usually do these check-arounds. And from what I found this year, the interest rates in the market is slowing them down a bit. Especially for the short-term rental world, and things like single and duplexes for things that people are, maybe out-of-state buyers that are looking to buy here. I've definitely seen the brakes hit on that a bit here. But granted, those people are still in the market and they're still looking. And I know that if the right property came up too, it's also a lack of inventory, which is really what the problem is. If the right property did come up for them, they would most definitely make the jump, even with the interest rates being the way that they are, just knowing that we could refinance here X many years down the line in order to secure a really great property at a great price currently. So just kind of waiting for the right inventory to come through here. We've got a nice long list of buyers that are looking for short-term, long-term, and then also even just single-family residences that we just don't have the market for down here, but we're really hoping for.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that I think frustrates me the most is watching people put off their financial freedom another year because they're trying to prepare themselves for what the market might do. And I just don't want to see people not reach their real estate and financial goals earlier, by delaying that. So I would say if you're interested in short-term rentals, my recommendation is do it. Jump out there, do it, and let's get you a property that can actually do the things you want it to do and pay for itself. As long as it's going to cover all those bases, I'm a big proponent of don't worry about the market. Let's go. Let's attack it. Let's hit your dreams. And then next year, we'll do another one. And so that's kind of, I'm a little more of a risk taker in that light. My wife, Libby, I think you all know, Rach would say, absolutely slow down. We're definitely, we offset each other a lot on that. I would say the couple things we hit on today, a property manager is worth their weight in gold, in my opinion, for running a successful property. If you're going to be a few hours away from that property, especially, I really think you need a property manager, just because it is very difficult to manage the property from a distance. You want to be able to have eyes on it. I know I gave him a shout out last week, but I feel like I'm going to turn this into the Louis Morrison podcast. He's giving me Louis has been doing this for a long time with real estate investing. And one of the things Louis told me personally when we sat down and we talked was, every realtor needs a realtor, right? Everyone needs someone that they can turn to. I am lucky enough that I have a great team surrounding me. I've got a broker in John Coda that I've run every deal by that I've ever bought to make sure that I'm not, he's seen 3 generations of real estate. He's an incredible mind. So I'm very, very grateful to have a man like John Coda, helping me out. And then, another one like Louis, who's, done the investing, and that's what he does. And one of the pieces of advice he told me was, if you can't drive past your property every single day, it's going to be a tough investment for you to manage. And that's the truth. If you can only drive by that property once a week, you're probably not going to be able to manage that property really well. And in that situation. It doesn't mean it's a bad investment. You've got to look into a property manager on that route so you can have someone that can have eyes on that building and can see what's going on with it. And so I would say if you're considering short-term rental, the first consideration you should make is the property management. And I think we're connected with a few property management companies that we work with and help people connect with. But I would highly recommend that because I do think they have alleviated a lot of stress for me, and I think they've actually helped me, make my properties better.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think that um, on the topic of property management as well, even for my clients that are a couple of hours away, it does help them, kind of structure their day and their weeks because they have tried it without property management as well. And worrying about photography, cleaning, bookings, ads. So trying to really get their business out there. These property managers really do it all. And there's a lot of really, really great ones down here that I think that'll really take your business to the next level too. Not just somebody who's going to come when the alarm goes off or somebody who's going to go when somebody's locked themselves out, but there are some really, really great people out there that for a price they'll really boost your business. But I think that's what's also really important too is when you're going to go and invest in a short-term rental, having the right people in your corner, kind of like what you were saying. So when you hire a real estate agent, and if your goal is to buy a short-term rental, make sure you're getting in with somebody who's going to know exactly what they're looking at in that area, and is going to have basically everything that you need in order to set this up correctly. If you do buy a property from somebody sometimes and they don't necessarily have the answers for it, you may have a harder time actually getting it up and running, and then also purchasing the right property that's going to do the cash flow that you want it to.
No, absolutely. And so I think that we've touched on, one of the biggest subjects that everyone wants to talk about in real estate. I get more messages every single day about short-term rentals than I do any other type of real estate. So what I want to do, Rach, is I want to make this, and I haven't even told everyone. So everyone, you're hearing this for the first time, and as is Rachel, so she's going to be surprised on this. I want to make this short-term rental a monthly podcast. All right, so we want to do this once a month, and we're going to do a couple different series on this, and we're going to talk about a few different things. But what I want to start doing, and we're going to challenge all of our next homies out there around the country. We have a lot of great next home agents around the country. Pat and Chuck Vosberg down in Florida, love them. Lauren in the Carolinas down in Myrtle Beach. My buddy Sean Carroll out in Montrose, Colorado. We want to challenge you guys to jump on this podcast. And sorry if I didn't say everyone, but there's so many next homies out there that we want to include on this in the vacation areas that people are looking at some of these short-term rentals. We want you guys to come on our podcast and talk to all of our friends, family, and clients up here in Maine and across the country about your area. So we want to know what's going on, how your area is doing. So shoot us a message, DM us, text me, hit me up at conference when we're down there at conference in Houston in March. We want to know what we can do to get you guys on our podcast to give all of our listeners a glimpse into what's going on in your market and a little bit about the short-term rental game out there. So I think that'll be a really fun one. So we're going to plan on having a guest next week. We won't announce who that special guest is going to be yet, but it will be a lender. So we're going to have a lender on next week, and we're going to talk interest rates. And then next month, we'll figure out, we're going to try and make it so this is a dedicated schedule for when we're going to have people on. So we're going to start announcing to you guys, what we're going to have, who we're going to have, and make it fun. So please DM us any of the content you'd love to see. We would love to provide you guys with as much information about different topics as possible. If you run, some short-term rental stuff and you want to come on and talk to us, feel free. We'd love to have you on. I have a lot of friends that I think would be great on here. Maybe they're a little camera shy, but that's fine. We'll get them on here and just talk about a lot of different ways that, you've seen success, and rightfully so, things that you've seen failure on, because I think people want to know the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's put it all out there. And I think we're going to have a great series with this. What do you think, Rach?
I think so too. Yeah. No, I'm really excited, and I'm excited to be bringing on somebody new to talk about short-term rentals monthly here, because I think that that's a really important part for this year. So
I love it. No, we're gonna have a great series this year in 2023, guys. So whatever the environment is, whatever the market is, we're going to adjust to the normal that is every single year, every single time, and the market's always going to shift based off of what's going on economically in the world. But don't let that stop you from creating your financial freedom in this world. So hit us up today, talk to us, let us connect you with our team of professionals. And we're just so grateful for you guys jumping on this and listening today, taking the time out of your day. Hope you had a safe commute out there in this tough weather. And we look forward to seeing you all next week.
bye,
So thanks,
guys.
Rach. See you, everyone.
Yeah.